Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session on understanding your child's learning style. So, while others are joining, uh, let's take some questions if you have any, or if you would want me to address anything specific today. So, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and take your questions, or you can put your questions in the chat box, please. Any questions, anything you would want me to address specifically? Yeah, Arpita. Yeah,
Uh, Hello, sir.
Hmm.
I'm Arvind Mangal's father.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good, sir. Sir, I have one of the questions. Like at this time, what is happening is kids are doing more of homely activities. They're not aligning more towards uh, you know s- more of literal things like alphabets and rhymes and all of that stuff, which was more at Blue Blocks at that point in time. Um, so I was wanting to know how can I help him more, learn more of alphabets and increase his focus towards that.
How can you help him learn the alphabet and increase more focus towards it, right? So,
Yes,
whether the government allows us to start this school in June or not. If we start the school, then he will get to learn at Blue Blocks. If not, we are doing the virtual. We have a very strong virtual learning plan, which
right,
will begin from mid of June.
right.
So the directors who understands the child totally will give you exact guidance on what you can do at home.
Okay. So
And
at this point in time, we should not try. Like we did some bit of take out the printouts of what the directors gave us for tracing and all the alphabets. Uh,
perfect.
is there anything else besides this we should
Yeah.
do?
So between now and mid June, just continue to do that.
Okay.
And when the school reopens, either physically or virtually, you can update the directress on where exactly the child is, and then the directress can give you very specific, precise inputs.
Okay.
See, the way the directress understands your child, I will never understand to that degree. So,
Got it.
and in this meantime, you have enough work on hand, right?
Yeah, I am assuming that itself will take some time. So yes.
Perfect. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking that, Arpit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions you have? Anything you would want me to address specifically? So we have few things in the chat box. Or any questions in the chat box?
Pawan, Rahul has asked a question in the Q&A.
Ah,
Uh, I'm reading that out to you. Why is it important to know about a child's learning style?
right. So why is it important to know your child's learning style? That was my first question, which I am going to ask. So let's begin with that. So I'm Pawan Goel. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Pawan Goel, founder of Blue Blocks. We also have Munira on call. Munira is co-founder Blue Blocks. And let's begin with that question, which you just asked. Why do you need to know your child's learning style? Why? Who would like to go? Why do you think we need to understand our children's learning style? Yep, Prasanna. One second. Yeah. So, Munir, will you be able to unmute people who are raising hand? Yeah.
So, Pawan, I think the reason for knowing the child's learning style is it would be easy for us to make them learn once we know their style.
Exactly.
So, both of us would be in the same page, right?
Correct. Once you understand the child's learning style, it is very easy for you to teach anything you want your child to learn. Perfect. What else? Why else do we need to know the child's learning style? Yeah. Yeah, Nirmita.
So I think it's important to know your child's learning style so that you don't confuse your child with what you think is correct. Whereas your child may be on a totally different, you know, learning curve. Like my younger daughter apparently is an auditory learner, is what her class teacher tells me.
Ah,
Any bit of me trying to sit her down or, try the traditional means doesn't seem to work so well. So
hmm.
one reason I joined to understand, how you go about this when your child is on a different plane altogether and you're just figuring out what that even means.
Correct. So by understanding, you are on the same page and you try and teach things the way the child is comfortable learning. You're trying and teaching in a manner in which the child can process the information better and learn better and use that information better, right? Got that. Thanks for sharing that, Nirmita. Yes, Karthik.
Well, I think it's very important to understand the child's learning style because, just a simple analogy, like if I have my friend who is from Punjab, who understands only Punjabi, right? And no
Uh-huh.
matter how much I can explain him things in Telugu, how much I know, and I try to talk to him in Telugu and try to explain him so passionately, so interestingly, he
Hmm.
wouldn't understand a bit, right?
Correct.
So it's very important to understand the child's style, and we actually inculcate that style and help the child that way.
Yeah. So it is like you get to speak to the child in the language in which the child understands than speaking to the
Exactly.
child in your own language which the child might never understand a single word, right? Got that.
That's right.
Very
That's
beautiful analogy. Yeah. Anybody else? So why we want to understand your child's learning style is so that you can prepare the environment. You can prepare the environment which is designed based on your child's personality, based on your child's how does your child think and how does the child utilize the information. All right. So we are talking about the learning styles. And what do we mean by the learning style is whenever you're giving any information or whenever you're trying to teach something, how is the child receiving the information? How is the child processing the information? How is the child understanding the information? And then how is the child able to utilize the information? So we want to identify your child's learning style so that the child can receive the information in a certain way, process it, understand it, and utilize it, right? Let me show you a PPT.
Pavan, are you there? Okay, looks like Pavan is experiencing some streaming issues. I'm just going to connect with him and see how best to get his video started. So just give us a couple of minutes and hang in there. Thank you. So in the meantime, if any of you have any other questions, you all can put it in the chat box. We will be dealing with, why we need to understand children's learning styles in detail, and also helping you, relate to how you can support your child with these learning styles at home. So any questions around that, anything else you would like to know, anything else you would like to share, you can put it in the chat box, and we will address it through the session. Yeah, Prasna, please share.
Munira, I think you are on mute.
I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Please speak. Oh, you wanted to tell me that I'm on mute, is it? Okay. Got that. Thank you. I think Pavan is back.
Yep. Thanks. Ranu, side.
Pavan, we are not able to hear you. Pavan, we are not able to hear you.
Am I audible enough? Yes.
Yeah.
So why do you need to know? I'm really sorry for the technical glitch we had. Why do you need to know your child's learning style? Because every child has a unique learning style, and every child's environment needs to be designed based on the child's learning style. So before even we understand the child's learning style, we need to understand when can learning happen. The learning can happen only when the child is feeling secured. If you look at how children are transitioned from the home environment to the school environment, where the child is being taken inside the gate and the parent is left, the child has no clue whether the parent will come back to pick up the child. The child doesn't understand, why am I suddenly left with a group of unknown people? And the child is crying and the child is feeling insecure. In that moment, that day, when the child is feeling insecure, do you think any learning can happen? No. The learning can only happen when the child feels the environment is safe and secure, when people around him or her give that sense of safety and security, is when the child can now start to learn. Real learning can happen only when the child is totally independent. Learning can happen only if the child has the ability to focus and concentrate. See, if a child cannot focus and concentrate, imagine the child is sitting. be it a Montessori classroom or be it a traditional classroom, if the child cannot focus and concentrate, there's no learning which is possible. The child needs to have the right work attitude to be able to learn. The child needs to be emotionally balanced. Children who are emotionally disturbed, children who are unwanted by parents, children who are all the time being shouted upon, yelled upon, children who are all the time being beaten up, children where they see their parents not having a healthy relationship, children who see their parents fighting, they are emotionally disturbed, and that emotional disturbance will impact their learning. If they're not emotionally balanced, they cannot learn. Child needs to be socially independent. If a child is being socially ostracized in a classroom, it has such a strong impact that the child just cannot learn. The child just cannot focus on what the teacher is saying. Again, be it a Montessori environment or a traditional environment. So, learning can only happen when the child is emotionally secured, the child is feeling safe, the child is independent, the child has the ability to focus, and the child has the right work attitude. Only when all these things are taken care is when the child can learn. Now, let's understand various different learning styles. There is visual learning style. You would see some children want to learn everything through images. You show different images, children look at those images and they would want to learn things through visual sense. There is kinesthetic sense, which is a combination of sensory and motor. There is motor based learning style where children need to be involved in lot of physical movement. There is sensory based learning style where children need to use one or multiple senses. You will see some children are musical learners. If you teach anything through poem, through songs, through music, they would learn much better and faster. There is, when there is whenever you're teaching, if there is emotion involved, if it is triggering their emotions, then that helps them learn. There are certain children where there is lot of stimulation they need for imagination. There is intuition based learning where children, you put things like you put a puzzle in front of a child and you will see how intuitively the child will solve the puzzle. Then there is linguistic learning where children would want to discuss, children would want to articulate, children want to research, children want to read, children want to hear a lot of things for them to learn. And the auditory learning is, mostly through listening. Like one of my cousins said, while he was growing up during his schooling, high schooling years, he would get his mom to read and he would just sit and listen to his mom. So it was purely auditory learning. Mom would keep reading, and he would keep listening, and that's how he would prefer to learn than he reading all by himself. So having understood the different learning styles, let's see how do we identify our child's learning style. So observation is the key. You will have to observe the child like how a scientist observes. Whenever you're teaching something, you will have to observe to see how is the child receiving the information, how is the child processing the information, how is the child comprehending the information, and how is the child utilizing the information or the concept which you are teaching. So observation is the key. You will have to be a keen observer. And observing once to understand his or her learning style is not enough. You will have to constantly, ongoingly keep observing. So now that you have built the skill set of observation, how do we really identify the child's learning style? So let's take some let's take a concept and see how do we help the child, how do we understand the child's learning style. If you look at, if you want to teach the child about planes, if you want the child to learn about everything to do with planes, let's see how do we identify your child's learning style. So what you would do, you would show some images of planes and try and teach the child how planes work and everything about the planes through visual mechanism. And then see how is the child processing the information and receiving the information. Then you would try getting the child to use the kinesthetic motor sensory based learning. So you will get the child to make a plane. You will try get the child to make different kinds of planes and see how much of the information, how much of the concept, how much of the idea about plane the child is able to understand, comprehend, and utilize. Then maybe sing a song, sing different songs about planes and see how the child is receiving the information, processing the information, comprehending it, and utilizing it. Then talk about the story of a plane to cater to the child's imagination and create certain emotion of the challenges people have faced while they were building these planes. Intuition based would be you put few parts of the plane and then see if the child is able to figure out on how to join those parts to be able to make the plane. Linguistic would be discussing about the plane and then getting the child to ask questions. You're answering, you're asking some question, the child is answering, and together you're building about how the planes work. Auditory would be where you're just speaking and the child is able to listen to what you're saying and then see if the child is able to understand. So how do we identify the child's learning style? Try out each of these models, try out each of these learning styles, and see which learning style is helping the child to be able to receive the information better, process the information, comprehend, learn, and then what is helping the child utilize the understanding. All right. So having, once you start to understand your child's learning style, how can we support their learning style? We want to support their learning style by giving any concept in the kind of learning style which they want to learn. And with any kind of concept for them to learn, what will always help is giving it in an activity format, giving it through material. And any concept given once is never enough. There is lot of repetition required. Repetition is what leads to the long term memory. Repetition is what leads to the understanding those concepts better. Repetition is what will help them learn better. After having enough repetition, and after the child has learned the concept, then what do we need to do is we need to see how do we apply these concepts. Now the child has learned and understood everything to do with planes. Now how can we apply all this learning? Can we get the child to make his own plane? Can we get the child to design his or her own plane? So when they start to apply these concepts, they will figure out that there is some part of it which they are not very clear about. So they will go back to the cycle of learning again. So again, they are trying to understand some part of how the plane works, and they will try and understand that concept and then come back to applying what they have learned. So any learning is incomplete if unless the child has applied that learning. Everybody with me? So now, will the child have the same learning style throughout his or her life? No. The learning styles might change over a period of time. So, as a parent, as an educator, we got to keep observing, keep listening to the child, and keep observing to see what is the learning style which the child is having preference. Another question you might have is, does the child have only one specific learning style? No. There will always, all children would want to learn things in multiple manner. So the best way to teach any concept to the child is by involving the child in every part of learning, involving the child with each of these learning style, involving the child. If you want to give a concept of plane, as we discussed, ideally try and give it to each of these learning styles. Try and give it to the child's visual part, to the kinesthetic part, to motor part, to the musical part, to the emotional, imagination based, intuitively, linguistically, and auditorily. All right. So when given in this manner, let's understand what happens in the brain. So here in the red part, you would see the sensory model. This is the brain representation of the body parts. If you look at from the sensory perspective, the hands and senses. Look at the hands, how the hands are taking up around 50 percentage of all the sensory part of the neural structure. And if you look at here, the motor model, in terms of the body parts, the neural structure around the body parts, the motor, in the motor area of the neural structure, the hands consume almost 70%. So in Montessori, you know how we try and give everything to their hands and senses first in the first 6 years, wherein we have built a very strong neural structure here, and we ensure that a child is very, very independent. The child's ability to focus and concentrate is taken care. We ensure that we build the right work attitude with lot of inner discipline. And at school, teachers ensure that the child's emotion is totally taken care of. And a lot of activities for children who are 6 plus, they do these activities in small groups, so that, and we also help them become socially independent, which help them in further learning. All right, so let's take some questions at this point of time. So you will have to raise your hand if you have any questions. Either raise your hand and or put your questions in the chat box, please.
Pawan, there has been a question in the chat box which says, how early can we identify the learning style of a child? You can begin with addressing this, and then I'll unmute a few people.
That's a very interesting question. So let me share some more insights from the question you have asked. If you look at in the very first year, every child wants to explore the whole world through the mouth. You give any object to the child would want to straight away explore it through the mouth. I've seen some 8 9 month olds, if you're offering something, they don't even have patience to take the object and put in mouth. They will straight away open their mouth to pick up the object and want to explore. So in the first year, that is how every child wants to explore the world. Between 1 and 6, if you look at, every child wants to explore their world with their hands and senses. Wherever they are, at home, outside, you would see they're exploring anything and everything with their hands and senses. Between 1 and 6, there's a lot of exploration and learning which happens through language. They're learning language and they are learning everything through language. At 6, the need for hands and senses to explore slowly starts to come down, and there's a newfound interest. They want to learn anything and everything based on imagination. So everything which you can offer to a 6 to 12-year-old child can be to stimulate their imagination. So they would love to hear stories. If you have a child who's 6 plus, no matter where you are, if you tell your child, I would want to tell you a story, your child will jump for it and would want to hear story. So how early can you identify the learning styles? Based on the child's age, you will naturally see certain learning styles. And with certain children who have, see, each of us are predispositioned for language, each of us are predispositioned for music, but you would see certain children have very high sensitivity for music, and they're singing all the time, so you know that your child is a musical learner. So these things again you can identify as early as when they are 2 3 year old, to sometimes you might see these things when they are 6 to 8 year old. So I hope I answered that question. That was very interesting question, by the way. All right. So if you have any questions, you will have to raise your hand. Yeah, Shreya.
You can hear me, Pawan?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so my question is, I think, around what we touched just now. This is Shreya's father. Shreya gave her own name in the meeting, so this is Shreya's father, Manas. So we have observed that she has, good kind of musical sense, like rhythmic sense, or she likes to basically listen to music, taps to music and all. We wanted to basically, so probably she has that knack for it. We wanted to further build upon that, and then when we try to do that, probably try to give her make her do some lessons, or maybe some follow some instructions so that she can build upon that. That's the part where she is not so much comfortable, so that kind of probably puts her off. So what I wanted to know is, how can we basically encourage that, so that her the innate knack that she has got for that musical kind of basically that sense that she has, that continues to develop, and then probably that can help her with acquiring some other skills as well down the line.
Correct. Can I know how old is she exactly as on today?
Yeah, she is 5.5 now.
It's fine. All
Yeah,
right. And what you have noticed is that she doesn't like a lot of formal instructions
correct,
around you, correct?
correct.
So what you can do is, for now, you play music at the auditory level. If any of you can play music at home, you keep playing, you keep singing,
Mhm.
and give a gap of few months before you put her in a structured class again.
Okay.
See, a lot of times for most of these music educators or a lot of these coaches who teach these things, for them it is all about outcome.
Mhm.
They want to ensure that within 3 months the child learns A to D or A to F.
Mhm.
But the more we focus on the outcome, we do not focus on the process in which the child wants to learn.
Okay.
What matters is the process. How is the process?
Mhm.
How is the teacher involving the child? How much freedom does the child have?
Mhm. Okay. Okay.
So at 5.5, if she's not able to take a lot of those instructions, give a gap for 3 to 5 months and then put her again and maybe try out a different instructor and see how it goes.
Sure. Okay. Makes sense.
All right.
So
Thank
yeah, not focusing on outcome, basically, totally opposite to our work environment, where we want to focus on outcome. Here we have to focus on the process.
See, we in Montessori, we actually are way more focused on the outcome than any other educator or parent.
Yeah.
The only way to get a great outcome is by focusing on the child, understanding the child, and giving things in the manner in which the child wants,
Mhm.
than giving it in the manner which the adult wants.
Got it. Sure. Thanks.
Thanks. I think Gaurang has asked a question. Why do children lose interest so quickly while writing and reading? How to help them work on their own? Generally, they prefer working with adults. So, how old is the child, Gaurangi? So, any question you ask, always please start with the child's age so that we know which age group are we addressing. The child is 5 year old, all right. So children lose interest in writing and reading because, again, in a traditional format, it is not given in the manner in which the child wants. Even in Montessori, some children lose interest because there is a lot of pressure at home for children to write and read. For children to write and read, the first thing is they need to see us doing a lot of writing and reading. Children only do things what they see. What they see at home is what they will do at home. There can't be different set of activities which you do and expect children to do something else. Children would exactly want to do what we would want to do. All right, and children prefer working with adults, so that will always be a challenge. Children are always demanding us as parents to sit with them while they work. So initially, to begin with, what you can do is you sit with your children and you start doing your own work. You say, I will sit with you, I have this work to do, you do your work, I will do my work. And it is very important that eventually they start doing things very independently. Any learning, real learning, can only happen when children are learning independent of the adult. Thanks for asking that question, Gaurav.
Pawan, just to add to that,
Yeah.
so independence also has to be reflected in all areas of their work. So generally, what happens as parents, we end up, making our children not very independent in their regular day-to-day activities. But when it comes to academics and writing and reading, we want them to do it all by themselves. So that is also one of the, I would say, discrepancies in the way we project the independence that we want our children to have, which could then get them to demand our attention most often than not. So that is something that we need to look at, that if we want our children to be independent with their academic work, with their reading and writing, we first have to help them become independent with their personal care, their care of the immediate environment. So how much are they able to take care of themselves? The more they get confidence in that, automatically you will see that children are going to be more independent with the rest of the work as well. And also there's another question that is asked in the Q&A. I'm going to read it. So my kid wants to listen to a lot of stories. We explain a lot of things in terms of stories, but the problem is that we get bored of telling stories all day. And also, I think the same parent has asked that my kid loses interest in everything that we give her and doesn't want to repeat an activity. So could you address that, please, Pawan?
So how old is the child again?
I wouldn't know. So 1 + 5. Yeah, just a second. Yes, I have unmuted. I have allowed you to talk.
Yeah,
You can
so three just completed three in March.
Okay, so the child has completed 3, and can you ask the question again?
So question is that a lot of times we try and explain things in terms of stories like what are good habits, what food should you eat, and what is good Grisha, who is bad Grisha, and so we have to make up stories in terms of good Grisha eats fruits, vegetables, and things like these. And all through the day she'll be asking stories, tell me one more story, tell me one more story. And then finally we have got bored of telling story because even while eating she'll be like, tell me a story. So now I have to tell a story in terms of good Grisha eats food without without argument, and she would eat her finish her food and all that. So she will do it, but number one. But the question number two is more in terms of that I look online for activities that we can give her, like aligning sticks to the lines, or coloring, or things like these. So initially she took interest in these activities, and we make sure that we give lot of different sort of activities that the kid doesn't get bored. But now she doesn't want to do it. I think the lockdown has taken a toll on her now. So yeah.
Yeah, so I got that. So regarding stories, even young ones love stories, and you can keep giving stories. But if your intent is that those stories will help her behave like that, it might still help to certain extent. But the real change in her behavior can only come based on how you are modeling things. You eat vegetables and fruits. If that's part of your lifestyle, you will see your child automatically will love salads, fruits, and everything to do with vegetables and fruits. So whatever you want your children to learn, be the role model, make it part of your lifestyle, because those stories will have very momentary impact. Whereas if they are seeing it consistently as a part of your lifestyle, you modeling all the behavior you want your child to follow, it will be very long term. It will become part of your child's personality. All the grace, courtesy, mannerism related stories you tell, unless the child sees that as part of the child's upbringing at home, it will never ever be part of the child's personality. Coming to the activities, what kind of activities you can involve, we have done few interesting sessions about how to keep your child engaged. So you can reach out to Sheetal on 9009555053, or can we just post our YouTube link here, Munita? So there are quite a few sessions where we spoke about how to creatively engage children during this lockdown period, which will give you a lot of ideas on how to keep your child engaged. All right.
Cool. Yeah, it works. Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking that. All right. We have one question in the chat. How to differentiate interest and learning style of the child? Example, music can be interest, but can it be considered as learning style? My daughter is 2 years old. This is very, very interesting question. So if they are sharing certain interest, let's understand what does that mean. So whenever they are showing certain interest, it means that there is certain part of the brain which is being stimulated, and based on that stimulation, the interest is being manifested. For example, at round two, you would see the child wants to keep talking because there's a lot of stimulation in the linguistic part of the brain, and the child is speaking. There's a lot of stimulation in the sensory part of the brain. That's where you would see the child is exploring things with the child's hands and senses. So for a 2 year old, whatever is the interest is the learning style as well. If they are interested in exploring things through hands and senses, then that's the learning style as well. For a grown up, the interest and learning style can be two different. But for your 2 year old, they are one and the same. Whatever you see the child is interested is exactly how you will have to involve the child. The child want to explore the world with hands and senses. So that's your child's learning style, and you will try and teach things, give things to the child's hands and senses. That was very interesting question. All right, we have Prasanna Reddy and Nirmita asking questions.
Yes. Nidita, I have permitted to speak.
Hi.
You can go ahead and.
Yeah. So I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. And there's one very interesting thing I've observed with her is when there is a concept being taught at school or home, she seems to pick it up very well. So if you tell her, a butterfly life cycle, she seems to understand it very well. Or you explain a sport to her, she seems to get it well. But when she had to learn A, B, C, like the mama A, the baby A, she found it very difficult to identify letters, differentiate letters, numbers. So I just didn't understand what was going on. And why was she finding, if she could understand a butterfly life cycle and explain it so well, why is ABC so difficult? And she seems to be doing that, you know. Her concepts are always very nice, but when there's the routine, mundane kind of learning, she's either not in, clearly not interested, is what I feel. So I just wanted to understand what is it I'm not able to understand.
Munira, would you like to address that?
Yeah. So, Nirnita, while your daughter understands certain things when explained in a lot of detail and in the form of a story or in the form of a very a very narrative description, that is
Mm-hmm.
probably how she learns. Whereas if we look at numbers and letters, the way they are offered in the traditional way, they are not offered in the manner in which children are capable of abstracting or taking it in holistically. They're only offered at the abstract level. So if you look at the letter A, the sounds that this letter makes in the English language are multiple
Mm-hmm.
sounds. But what is it that
Right.
they are expected to learn? Two slanting lines with one, horizontal line in the middle.
Right.
So to basically fathom that understanding and then to apply it, see, you would be basing your judgment on of her understanding on how she is
Mm-hmm.
applying the letter A, correct? How she is
Hmm.
using the letter A. So that
Hmm.
there are so many ways in which the letter A can be applied in the English language, which has not been explained to her, which has not been spoken to her about at all. She's only expected to learn the capital A and the small a. And capital A,
Hmm.
if you look at the application of it, except for looking through a dictionary, there's hardly much of application
Mm-hmm.
in the language per se. So the way things are
Oh.
offered need to be offered in the way that
Mm-hmm.
she's able to take. Getting that?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, 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 I got you. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, one question, Pavan and Munira. I mean, I have 3.5-year-old twins, twin baby boys, and they are like they are very fond of stories, like for anything. I mean, for eating, for even from starting from brushing. They have, I think they have come to a mode like only if I tell a story. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, it is not like I mean, like someone has said, like related to manners or something. There should be some suspense and there should be some story in it. So something like that, and they're too. I mean, they're too attached to it. Is it okay? I mean, they're getting into a mode like only if I tell a story, they'll do something like that. So, are we on a right path?
Yeah. So, see, if children start to decide how things are going to be, you're in deep trouble going forward. Children should know that you are the boss. Children should know that finally you decide on things. If children know that they can decide things today, they are asking story, tomorrow they will start demanding something else.
Hmm. Yeah.
Having said that, telling stories good, very, very good. Now, what kind of stories should you be telling to your child in the first 6 years? Have stories based on reality. Do not give fairy tale and imagination based stories. Tell
Oh,
stories about your childhood, about grandparents, about relatives. Tell, you know, stories about your child's, how, what happened during the pregnancy. Talk about things which children don't remember between 0 to 3. You can tell all kinds of stories, but based on reality. And do
okay.
not
Yeah.
associate story with something. Only if you tell story, they will brush. Only if you tell the story, they will eat. Then they are deciding on how things are going to be. Story time, keep it separate from whatever else you do.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
All right.
And one more thing, Pavan. I mean, maybe they are bored too much or something like that. I mean, I mean, one kid is little healthier than the other one, and he is eating very badly. So how do I stop both, fighting each other?
We have done a session exclusively on sibling rivalry. Mridula,
Okay.
can you post that link? So Mridula is posting the link in the chat box. There's a lot
Sure,
you
sure.
need to understand about sibling rivalry.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that.
Pavan, we have a couple of more questions. I'm going to read them out.
Yeah.
Okay. So, uh, on your comments on the learning style, what if a child is showing a lot of interest in watching videos? Child is 5 years old.
So in the first 6 years, we strongly oppose any video-based learning for multiple reasons. Children need to experience. We did speak about learning styles based on their age. So during the first 6 years, what the brain needs is to experience the world naturally. What stimulates the brain is nature. What stimulates the brain is everything in its real form. And if you look at the electronic gadget exposure, excuse me, if you look at the gadget exposure, the content we show, they are not experiencing it real time. It is in 2D format. It is in electronic format, which hampers their brain development. So in the first 6 years, we are very, very clear about no gadget exposure, no video based content, because most of this content is evoking a lot of emotions which they ought not to experience at this young age. It impacts their ability to focus and ability to concentrate, and it damages their whole neurological structure in multiple ways. For a child who's 6 plus, once in a while some amount of electronic content is still okay, but in the first 6 years, no video based content, please. Whatever you think children are learning through video, you will have find many more interesting ways when you are trying to teach those concepts. Yeah.
All right. So we have another question. My kid is 5 years old, spends all his time only on playing different games. He would not spend even an hour to learn through reading and writing. Is that okay to continue, or should I change his schedule? I don't want to insist on anything, but it's a concern for me. So this is Venkat Krishna Kopuri who's asked this question.
Yeah, so I'm glad about your concern that you do not want to force the child. Again, children love reading, provided you read for a 5 year old. 5 year olds are not fully ready to read all by themselves. The more you read for yourself, the more you read for children, the more interesting books you have, you will see how reading can never be a concern. If the child sees both the parents read regularly as a part of their lifestyle every day, you will have a child who will turn out to be an avid reader. Regarding writing, again, ensure that you are writing. You are doing a lot of writing work in as part of your lifestyle. Whenever you send any WhatsApp message, try and write it on the paper and then send a screenshot of what you have written, so that the child starts to see. The more you start writing, you will see the child would automatically want to take the pencil and paper and start to write. Even if the child is not ready to write, the child will do some kind of scribbling. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add a little
Yes.
bit to this, Pawan. So, one part of his question is also about his concern about how his child is interested in playing different games.
Mhm.
So it's also the way we look at games in our regular routine. So you have to understand that learning does not just happen through writing and reading. There is a lot of learning that your child is actually doing while he's playing all these games. In fact, with a few older children, we do strongly recommend that playing a lot of these board games help them in creating neural connections, pathways, and understanding certain concepts in a much better manner, and also from the perspective of the application, which is an important part of the learning process. So if your child is actually playing games, you should be happy that he's involved in games, because there is a lot of learning that is happening through the playing of these games. All right. So I hope we've answered that question, Mr. Venkat Krishna. There's another question from Murli, Nayanika's father, one of our parents. So Nayanika is 8 years old. While we focus so much on the child's learning style now, what happens when they move to a higher level of studies where they will be part of a more heterogeneous group with a teacher focused delivery methodology? Will the child face a challenge at that time during transition?
So whether the child has gone to a Montessori school or not, if the child doesn't fit into the traditional auditory visual learning model, every child will struggle, whether the child has come from a Montessori background or not. And I'm sure, out of 60 of us on this call, several of us have struggled whether we have been to a Montessori school or not. So regarding this transition, how it will still help our Montessori children is that since they are exposed to most of these concepts at a multi-sensorial level through different means of learning, their concepts are so strong that they are way ahead in terms of being able to learn anything at purely abstract level. Whereas a child who's only been a product of a traditional schooling, where the child has only learned things at the auditory and visual level, for them, if they are not auditory and visual learners, they will struggle way more than our Montessori children, because of our children's fundamental concepts being very strongly learned in a multiple dimensional manner. They can still learn things at an abstract level way better, even if they're not visual auditory learners. So, do you think I have addressed that question, Munira? Yeah. Would you like to say anything on this, Mridula?
Yeah, well, only one thing maybe I can add to that is that, especially with Montessori children, the different learning styles that we have just enumerated can all go together also with some of them. It's not just that a child need not only be a sensorial learner or an intuitive learner or a imagination based learner. At least after when this intellect has developed enough in this 6 to 12-year age group, they would have imbibed all these kind of learnings. They would, though they may be oriented towards one, they are not restricted by it. They can easily, they are able to take all of them together and then apply it in their in a manner that suits their purpose of learning, that suits their cause or reason to learn. So I think that that takes care of a child beyond 12 years of age, or when they go into these higher classes of studying where more academics are stressed upon. So that way they can easily cope up, is what I think. Mostly. I hope that answers some more.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Yeah, you want to add?
Yeah, just one thing. So, we've noticed that children who have passed out having had the experience of a Montessori education, not just learn things at a higher, let's say, college level, university level, a higher schooling level, but they also make it their own. So they apply their learning style to whatever is being delivered to them, and then they further explore that. So their understanding of the concepts that are just given to them in a very auditory visual manner, they actually accept it. They then do their own research, they add their own learning style and enhance their own learning. So they are not just attuned to learning what is being taught, but they're attuned to refining their learning, enhancing it and making it their own. So I think that is a major value add to the holistic education that we have been talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have a couple of people who want to ask questions. Prasanna Reddy, I have already permitted to talk, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, Prasanna.
You might have to unmute yourself, ma'am. Okay, I'll do it for you.
Is it fine now?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. My question is, when we say virtual classes, does that mean that child have to sit in front of laptop or something like that for some time, or is it so? Is it how it would be?
Uh, this question is with regard to what?
Virtual classes. I mean, you said by mid of June there would be virtual classes. I mean, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Muni.
So, Ms. Prasna, we will be addressing this at length in another session altogether. We'll be helping you understand what we mean by that because it deserves a whole session, to help you understand what it is going to be like.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So, I am allowing Vikram Reddy. You can ask your question now.
All right. So just a second, Vikram. So it's 11:30, and let us formally close this session. But me, Munira, and Nudla will be on this call
Oh.
till we address all your questions. So I would want to thank each one of you for being on this call. It really meant a lot. Lot of interesting questions, lot of interesting conversation has happened, and we'll continue to discuss things. Even if you do not have questions, lot of questions which other parents are asking might be very relevant to you too. So unless you have something very important, my recommendation would be to stay tuned and would love to hear your feedback. Please leave your feedback in the window about how the session was and what else you would have expected from these sessions, which will help us improve these sessions in the future. All right. So for those of you who have to leave, thank you so much for being on this call. For the rest of us, let's continue. Yeah, over to you, Vikram.
Yeah, thank you, Pawan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So the question is, I'm father of Kartikeya. He's 3 years, 7 months old. So we are telling him that you can't see a mobile phone or a TV till. So now, like, why he's what he's asking. So he said, you need to get engaged. So only after 6 years is what you can see. So that
Perfect.
is what we try to say. But now it has become for him as a goal that he has to complete 6 years, and then it's like I asked him a question randomly, like, after big, what do you want to become? I want to see mobile. It's like it has. So is it? It goes on like for the next 2 years also. Even if he asks, he will say that after 6 years. But
Correct.
after 6 years, is it right for him to see or
So,
not? And yeah, just one more thing. And whatever he's trying to see now also, he's not able. He's not interested in seeing the videos, but the operations, the features is what he's more interested. How is it working? Kind of. That's all. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
yeah. So regarding, after six, is it okay? After six, certain amount is okay. How much is certain amount? My answer would be as less as possible.
Yeah, but getting him to think that after 6 you'll get, is it fine? That thought process is it fine or not? Is what I was thinking.
It's still okay. Now that you have said it, there are no two ways about it. What I would say is, in the first 6 years, we don't let children get exposed to this. After six, we will discuss.
Okay.
And no matter what, they will always, children would assume that when they grow up, they get to do all of this and they always look forward to those things.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Yeah. And whenever he's seeing, he's more interested on the features part of it, not on the video. So should we explain the features or not of the mobile? Like, for example, how do you unlock it, or how do you mute it? Why do you put it in airplane mode? What is the feature of the airplane mode? He whenever we're trying to do it, he's seeing it and observing it and asking us questions. So
Yeah. See, the more you explain, the more you're only building the curiosity and interest around that. Now,
it's better to avoid.
nothing wrong in explaining again. So
Okay.
nothing wrong in explaining, because every time child asks question, the child has an assurance that yes, Papa will answer my questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you will have to decide how to deal with that.
Got you. Got you. Thank you, Pawan. Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Pawan, we have a question in the Q&A by Prajna Mahapatra. My child is 3 years old and she has a lot of interest in doing painting, watering plants, and a lot of different activities. But if she's repeating the same activity, she's getting bored. What should I do? Shall I start teaching her alphabet and numbers?
Uh, uh, is your child a Montessori child? I'm assuming not.
Doesn't look like.
All right. So you can in Montessori we introduce alphabet very differently. We begin with phonetic, then we begin with sandpaper letters and movable alphabet. So if you are looking forward to be a Montessori parent, if you are looking forward to your child going to Blue Blocks or any other Montessori school, then I would strongly recommend not to introduce alphabet, phonics, or any of that. Let us do it, in a very professional manner. Otherwise, if you are decided to put your child in a traditional school, you can go ahead and introduce alphabet right away. Yeah.
Also, the part of her question about the child getting bored by repeating the activities, would you like to address that? So while the child is interested in what it is,
Yeah.
she's been told to repeat or she is repeating it.
So children will have interest if there's a lot of freedom. If children can do their own art, then we telling them to color in a certain manner, or we want them to do something. What will keep their interest is adding a lot of variety. So if you have already used crayons, use paint, use paintbrush, use different kinds of paintbrush, use different kind of painting material, use different kind of art activities. So give a lot of variety. The more the variety, the more they will be interested in. So yeah.
All right, yeah. There's a question by Vaishnavi Reddy. The parent, the parent has to be the boss, but it's confusing me. My kid Srinika is 2.5 years old. She's very independent and vocal about her needs. I find it difficult to draw the line. When should I be in charge and when should I let her be in charge?
Yeah, so very interesting question. We have a completely dedicated session on how to get your children to be independent and how to get them to self learn. So while you would watch that, what I would like to say here is, finally, whenever there's a tussle, whenever you do not want the child to do something, children need to know that your word is final. So we want them to be independent on one hand, but on the other hand, you are the boss. Mostly what happens is we get children to become the boss. Like one of the parents shared how for every activity, child will say, I will do the activity only if you tell the story. So here you have clearly made your child the boss, that you will do what the child wants and the way the child wants. And then when you don't want it that way, there is a power struggle because you have clearly ascertained that the child is the boss. So you will have to find that right balance between communicating that you are the boss and helping the child become independent. So if you go through the video which we have created around independence, you will understand it at a deeper level.
And there's another question on mobile exposure. Are video calls with grandparents good or bad?
So our uh, answer for gadget exposure. So I leave it to your discretion. All right. All right. Any
Any
more
other question?
questions? Yeah. You can leave it in Q&A. You can raise your hand. All right. Looks like you're done. Great. Thank you so much for being on this call. Thanks so much for being part of this session. It was wonderful interacting with each one of you, and looking forward to see you on some more sessions which we are coming up next week. All right. Till then, stay safe. Take care. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.